George Galloway is once again a member of parliament in the United Kingdom. Now, George Galloway is a friend of this program. He's been a guest, I believe, several times now. And he is a fervent supporter of Palestine. He's also a champion of peace and one of the foremost, at least when it comes to politicians and former politicians, champions of the larger and broader fight against empire. He has been a long-standing opponent of empire, especially when it comes to the collective West. So George Galloway won a momentous, a real historic by-election, which occurred because the member of parliament for Rochdale died, and there was a by-election to replace him in the interim of a general election. And George Galloway ran on the Workers' Party of Britain ticket, the political party which he leads, and won in what was really a landslide, receiving over 40% of the vote and receiving more votes than I believe Conservative, Labour, the other parties in the parliament combined. And I believe the second most votes received were from another independent candidate. So Rochdale, here's DD Geopolitics, has a video of his a brief clip of his speech, which I want to play, because Rochdale has rejected the consensus, the elite consensus in the UK, and it has done so on a mandate, not just to improve the lives of Rochdale. And you'll see that the Western mainstream media is trying to say that George Galloway is ignoring them. Not for a second is this true, but really it's a mandate to be an opponent of empire, which to me is a major development in the collective West, one we don't see very often. So here is what George Galloway had to say in the wake of his major election victory. Here we go.
Keir Starmer, this is for Gaza. You have paid and you will pay a high price for the role that you have played in enabling, encouraging, and covering for the catastrophe presently going on in occupied Palestine in the Gaza Strip. I thank the people of Rochdale who voted for me in such numbers, but promised to work faithfully for all Rochdalians and to work for the day where you can again be born in Rochdale. Again, be born in Rochdale. I want to tell Mr. Starmer above all that the plates have shifted tonight. This is going to spark a movement, a landslide, a shifting of the tectonic plates in scores of parliamentary constituencies, beginning here in the Northwest, in the West Midlands, in London, from Ilford to Bethnal Green and Bow. Labour is on notice that they have lost the confidence of millions of their voters who loyally and traditionally voted for them generation after generation.
So what George Galloway is saying there is the reason why he was able to win is not just because he ran a campaign that people related to. This is for Gaza, he said, and there is a popular mandate all across the collective West to end Israel's onslaught. But not just that, but also because Labour, the Labour Party, has basically forfeited any reason to be confident in it, given that it has, with the leadership of Keir Starmer, taken the United Kingdom, taken the Labour Party, once known as a so-called progressive party and anti-war party, into the doldrums of neoconservatism, of empire. That is the reason why, or that is a major reason why George Galloway was able to win. And so no less did, and I'm not going to play this whole thing, but no quicker did George Galloway win the election that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the UK, hold his first press conference ever as Prime Minister just to respond and smear George Galloway. I mean, this was just a pathetic display, and I'll just play a small bit of this because you have to just see how worried the elite is in the UK with George Galloway's victory. Because what this means is that George Galloway, who we know from the mother of all talk shows, you might have seen him on this program more than a few times, as a champion for Palestine, as a champion for peace in Ukraine, genuine peace that takes into account Russia's security interests, that genuinely wants to see the war campaign against China ended, that wants to see all of the resistance groups and countries all around the world that are under attack from the United States, the UK, and the collective West have their self-determination, that this person is now back as a member of parliament in a time where the elite's consensus, the elite's legitimacy could not be any more fragile than it is right now. So here's Rishi Sunak. Here's what he had to say in relation to George Galloway's win.
In recent weeks and months, we have seen a shocking increase in extremist disruption and criminality. What started as protests on our streets has descended into intimidation, threats, and planned acts of violence.
What is he even talking? I mean, this is literally just him reading a script from the Israel lobby. That's all Rishi Sunak is doing here. He's reading a script from the Israel lobby, talking about how people who support Gaza, who want to see this just absolute massacre and who want to see things like the Flower Massacre never happen again. I mean, the things that have been happening in Gaza, it's even hard for me to cover them at all. But from the Flower Massacre, killing over 100 Palestinians just because they were trying to get aid, there was some kind of bait tactic that Israel was using. All the videos we are seeing of them making fun, after committing massacres, making fun of Palestinians, of Muslims, of taking toys, and all kind of just the most egregious war crimes being committed in the name of genocide in Gaza by Israel and its US and UK backers. Now they want to shift the blame, as they always do, to the people who want to see that end. And that's what they're trying to pin on George Galloway.
Jewish children fearful to wear their school uniform lest it reveal their identity. Muslim women abused in the street for the actions of a terrorist group they have no connection with.
So not only is he saying that George Galloway's victory is connected to so-called anti-Semitism, which really here is being said to be, Jews are being caught in the crossfire of what the Zionists are doing, which is, I don't even know if that's even true, because a lot of times this is based in no facts, right? People who are supposedly scared, when the reality is that it's Israel creating an atmosphere of intense rage. And he's also blaming Palestinians for the anti-Islam, anti-Arab sentiment, which was deliberately provoked by Zionists themselves and European governments and the US government to wage the war on terror. But yet, who's he blaming? George Galloway and the people who oppose the massacre in Gaza.
Now our democracy itself is a target. Council meetings and local events have been stormed. MPs do not feel safe in their homes. Long-standing parliamentary conventions have been upended because of safety concerns.
And that's all I'm going to play, because he's going to continue to go on and on. These tears. I don't want to play little Rishi Sunak's little tears about how everyone feels unsafe because George Galloway, because protesters, because people are angry with the Western political establishment, in particular in the United Kingdom, for essentially selling the country out to Israel so that Israel can do what it's doing to Gaza. That is one of the most I mean, if there's, I don't know if there's anything more despicable than that. But that's what Rishi Sunak was doing, blaming George Galloway, saying that he is the threat. That was his response. And of course, and now we're going to get into how George Galloway responded, because I think it was brilliant. We're going to play this because the media wanted to essentially, and I said this is what it looks like to tear down Western media lies and smear campaigns because they're in panic over his election victory. And Sky News, this is an incredible, I'll try to play as much as possible. Sky News had an incredible interview with George Galloway, not because Sky News did a great job, but because George Galloway absolutely demolished the reporter. And of course, who the reporter worked for, you can see him on his phone. He has this script where he's trying to reference it. And what is he saying? He's saying, oh, well, my masters want me to say this. So George Galloway, what do you think about that? Okay, my master said this. George Galloway, can you please respond to Rishi Sunak, my master? You know, like this is how politics works now in the collective West. How the media works, the mainstream media. They are nothing but appendages, nothing but another estate to the military apparatus, to the empire. So here is the interview. Here is, and basically we didn't have to listen to Rishi Sunak at all because this journalist, so-called, will show you what the elite in the UK are saying, Sunak and others, about George Galloway's victory. So here we go.
I'm standing here at George Galloway's campaign headquarters. George Galloway, did you just watch the Prime Minister's speech?
I didn't watch it, but I understood the first part of it related to the Rochdale by-election.
The Prime Minister has just said that your election of you to Parliament is beyond horrifying. What do you say to that?
Well, I can understand how disappointed he is about the by-election. The Conservative Party, which is the government of the country, was crushed, not just by me, but by an independent candidate that no one had ever heard of before outside of Rochdale. So it was a disastrous night for the Conservatives and a disastrous night for Labour. I got more votes than Labour and the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats and the Reform Party put together, which adds up to a pretty crushing rejection of the two-party system. So I understand why he's alarmed.
I want you to address some of the specifics that the Prime Minister said about you this evening. He said that you backed Hezbollah. Is that true?
I don't know what that means, backed Hezbollah. I oppose Israel's occupation of Lebanon, and I respect the right of people in occupied territory to resist their occupier. And I've done so since Hezbollah was formed and Israel occupied much of Lebanon.
So George Galloway has a long history of fighting on behalf and in defense of Palestinian rights, self-determination, and of course the larger resistance regionally to occupation, Israeli, and of course the Western imperial forces that have backed Israel in this conquest, in these objectives for decades upon decades. So that's George Galloway's history. But what's interesting is this reporter, how many times did he have to say that, and you'll see it, he's going to continue to repeat himself. Oh, Rishi Sunak says this is horrifying. Rishi Sunak says this is horrifying. What do you have to say to that? It's almost as if he expected George Galloway to say, well, I agree with him. Of course, George Galloway is going to say that it was his victory that has made them all so scared, because that's true. They don't want to cover. Sky News doesn't want to cover how George Galloway's victory was a landslide that demonstrates the massive popular mandate to end this onslaught in Gaza and to bring peace, an agenda of peace back on the table in British politics so that the problems of the UK can be solved themselves. But here we go. We need to continue.
Right up to the Litani River, regularly bombing Beirut and so on. So I'm not sure what business that is of his, because you see,
Hezbollah are a terrorist organization.
Actually, they're part of the government of Lebanon, a country with which we have sovereign diplomatic relations.
Who is this so-called journalist that is trying to lecture George Galloway, someone who literally has been doing this for decades, has put his life on the line? There's another video with another Western media outlet where he literally outlined how he was assaulted. I believe it was 10 years ago. He was assaulted in the streets for his support for Palestine, and that's why he wears a hat. Someone who has put his body on the line. Who is this thing to try to lecture him on Hezbollah? Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. Really? That's journalism? Seems like you're trying to give the answers rather than ask the questions.
I had this debate with Sky's Anna Botting in 2006. It's quite an epic clip. You should watch it. More than 100 million people have. They said all these things about me in the by-election. And in the by-election, it was them that got crushed in the democratic process. So I'm not sure why he would reheat it now.
The Prime Minister is saying
that you are... This is God. We're talking about little Rishi Sunak in the fag end of his prime ministership. Don't talk to me as if he's come down from the mount with tablets of stone. The things that he says are somehow meant to awe me. They may awe you, they don't awe me.
A lot of people have just watched what the Prime Minister said. This is your opportunity to respond to what he said. Well, he says that there are forces here at home trying to tear us apart. He is implying you are a divisive figure. You have run an election campaign that has tried to appeal particularly, not entirely, to one section of the community.
Who won the election? Me or Rishi Sunak? I've got the democratic mandate here.
So Rishi Sunak is not God. And that is exactly the correct response to when someone in mainstream media, Western mainstream media, is trying to beat you over the head with government talking points. This is what they always do. And George Galloway just handled that. I mean, you couldn't have handled it any better.
Yeah, not Rishi Sunak. He didn't even come second. He was lucky to come third. So don't put to me statements made by Rishi Sunak as if I'm supposed to be impressed by them. He don't impress me much.
We at Sky have spent some time today on the streets of Rochdale, and there are people who say that they feel intimidated by people like you and the people that have supported you.
I have just
and they have pointed out that you have concentrated your campaign on foreign affairs, and they worry that Rochdale will not be the winner.
That's my answer to you. I was just elected with a thumping majority by the electorate in Rochdale. That's all that matters to me.
So why are there people in the streets of Rochdale today worried?
Well, people voted yesterday, and they voted for me. Why is that difficult for you to grasp?
Why are there people on the streets worried?
There may be people who didn't vote for me who are worried, but the majority, the thumping majority, voted for me. I've got the mandate, and I'm going to the House of Commons with it. And
why are people worried? Why are people worried? What is it? This is not journalism. You didn't provide any evidence, no sources, no, here's the person I spoke to. Didn't bring the people into the campaign headquarters. You didn't give any evidence. You were just trying to spread innuendo. And George Galloway, again, handled it perfectly. He said, I got the mandate. I got the majority. Why should I be concerned about the people who didn't vote for me? That's their right. They didn't vote. Maybe they don't like me. Guess what? The vast majority of people support me, and I am going to govern with that mandate. That's just basic politics. And this is something that it has been lost in the collective West. The collective West is completely lost in this regard. They don't even try to follow the so-called mechanisms of quote unquote democracy that they champion so much. This is not about that. This is about empire, and they're very mad at George Galloway for being an opponent of it.
And it's a mandate, you think, to do what? Because there are people that listen to what you say about whether or not Israel has a right to exist, what you say about what many Jewish people think are threatening
We had this
slogans.
conversation last night. Why are you reheating it?
Because in the light of the Prime Minister's
Don't keep
statement.
telling me about the Prime Minister as if he was Moses.
Do you not respect the Prime Minister?
Do I respect the Prime Minister? I despise the Prime Minister. And guess what? Guess what? Millions and millions and millions of people in this country despise the Prime Minister. I don't respect the Prime Minister at all.
What are you planning to do next week?
Change the subject. That was just, if there was the meme of all the people falling back and, just going, oh, that would be the moment, because George Galloway completely destroyed him there. Who is he talking to? Of course, George Galloway is not running on a political campaign or orientation or platform that supports Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is not just George Galloway's opponent. He is the opponent of the vast majority of people everywhere in the world, because Rishi Sunak represents the tiny minority of the elite that seek to wage war, plunder, profit for the very few at the expense of the majority worldwide and in the United Kingdom. So, of course, that's, this is just putting the shoe right in your mouth, right? It's like when George W. Bush had the shoe thrown at him in Iraq, it's like taking that shoe and putting it in your mouth. That's what this guy is doing here.
Next week when you arrive in Parliament?
Well, I'm meeting the Speaker on Monday morning, and then I'll be introduced and sworn in. I'll be escorted by the Right Honourable David Davis MP, former Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party. I don't know why he would do that if he thought I was the kind of man you're clearly implying that I am. David Davis is one of the great parliamentarians of today and this age. And I'll be taking my seat in the House of Commons and speaking for the people of Rochdale. That's what I was elected to do.
And what is your message also to Keir Starmer?
My message to Keir Starmer is that the skids are under you in scores of Labour seats up and down the country, because you've lost the trust, you've lost the confidence of millions of your traditional loyal voters.
Now we have now had an election where two of the candidates have alleged intimidation. The Prime Minister referenced that intimidation in his address on the steps of
to the Prime Minister as if that's supposed to impress me. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister is a rather diminutive, diminished and degraded politician. He made a party political statement. I don't care about Rishi Sunak's attitude. What I care about is that the returning officer, a man of unimpeachable integrity, I'm sure you'll agree, declared it a free and fair election, and me as the winner, and Rishi Sunak as one of the crushed two big parties in the state.
So why are two candidates?
Keep repeating the same questions to me, because I have other people to talk to. So let's make this the last one, shall we? We got a party to deal with.
Allegations of intimidation, allegations that your supporters intimidated other candidates.
What times you've said that? The returning officer declared it last night. You were there as a free and fair election, and me as the winner.
And the Electoral Commission today have said that they're going to look and talk to the parties.
Have to just suck it up. I won the election.
Look at the people who are surrounding George Galloway. Those are the people. These are the people. These are people who obviously support George Galloway's platform. They're people who are obviously opposed to what the so-called impartial media, the Western mainstream media, are doing here. What Sky News, Sky News has long been a complete it's Australian media, which of course means it's a subsidiary of the United States, and it has long been discredited. But here, look at this position. Look at this. There's nothing. Look at this. This is an image, right? Just here. People should screenshot this, take it, spread it. Here you have underneath the headline, it says, Prime Minister says the streets are hijacked by those hostile to our values. It also said that Sunak says that democracy is under attack in the United Kingdom because of this. And here you have George Galloway here, this position, walking away from this absolutely loserish, this complete and utter imbecile who is just carrying water for genocidaires and the empire as a whole. And look at the people in complete support of him. Look at, I mean, that's just, I'll just play the last 5 seconds here.
George Galloway, thank you very much indeed.
Look at that face. There you go. Everyone's cheering. That is the face of defeat. I mean, that's the face of defeat. You don't even have to put the Labour Party's candidate, who they claim they disowned, that they didn't take out of the race, but they said don't vote for him. It was a strange by-election indeed, but nonetheless one that points to, I think, a really hopeful scenario. It really points to something that I think we all need sometimes, which is hope for the future. And there's many more examples of this. It's not just George Galloway's victory. So what I think I'm going to do is, I just want to talk really quickly about other things that are happening around the world in relation to Palestine. It's not just George Galloway's victory. You also had at the end of February, as these votes were being prepared in Rochdale, you had China at the International Court of Justice supporting Palestine's right to armed resistance. You have Hamas, Fatah, and Palestinian resistance groups in Moscow talking about the potential of a unity government in Gaza, representative of the resistance forces. You have Nicaragua filing against Germany at the ICJ too, in response to Germany's support of Israel. You have Cuba joining a massive worldwide march in support of Palestine. And then you also have a British tanker being sunk by Yemen. It took 4 days for that boat to sink, but this cargo ship was sunk because Yemen and Ansar Allah have continued their support of Palestine. So when you think that there is no hope for the situation in Gaza, when you see the images, the horrific images of what Israel is doing, this ongoing genocide, the Flower Massacre, just absolutely egregious crimes, when you see the United States explicitly endorsing this, protecting Israel at all costs, doing absolutely the bare minimum around these so-called ceasefire talks, that can lead easily to despair. But George Galloway's victory, the multipolar world's efforts, all of those things need to be heeded and paid attention to, because they show that, in fact, it is the global majority's opinion that what Israel is doing is not just wrong, but needs to be stopped immediately. And of course, you might ask, well, Danny, that's all well and good, but what kind of impact can it have? That right there is the problem and the contradiction. It's you have Russia, you have China, you have essentially most of West Asia, the axis of resistance. You have countries, progressive countries all over the world supporting the Palestinian cause. But then you have the United States, you have Israel, you have the collective West using their force, their influence, creating tripwires everywhere so that this support cannot be as effective as it should be. What Ma Xianmin did at the ICJ, China's envoy did, what he did at the ICJ to support the right of armed resistance for the Palestinian people is a major step, because that is enshrined in international law. And it demonstrates that if the people of the world, if the countries all over the world that support Palestine were able to operate freely, then we would have a free Palestine right now, because the Palestinian people would be able to free themselves. But it's because Israel has carte blanche support, protection from the empire. That's the tripwire. That's the razor wire that makes it so the Palestinian people have to suffer from this scourge. And that is what we need to focus on. We are not over there. We are in the epicenter of the empire. So George Galloway's victory shows that there are many people who want to see this thing end, and it's all about putting the feet into motion and the people into motion to make that happen. And that's what this program is all about. That is what these reports, this analysis is supposed to generate. Things like what happened in Rochdale, an election of someone who truly does stand with the people, with the Palestinian people, and with all people who are supporting self-determination for Palestine and also for the rest of the world, which wants to see anything like what's happening to Palestine end wherever it may be happening. So it's a huge victory. Hopefully we can get Mr. Galloway, George Galloway, on this program again soon. I'm sure he's very, very, very busy. But nonetheless, it's a huge victory against this Israeli onslaught, against those forces that back it. And we have to remember that when it looks like backs are against the wall, that this mass murder regime, genocidal regime is not going to be stopped, things can happen which can set into motion the defeat of those we think are not defeatable, we think are invincible. Israel is not invincible. This will end. The sacrifice of the people of Palestine will not be forgotten. And the majority of the world will correct this problem. So really, it's time that is running out. And George Galloway's victory is a big sign of that. And it is clear that the political situation all over the collective West is mightily unstable, and that the global majority, once that instability leads to a political crisis and a military crisis, as it is quickly forming in so many aspects from Ukraine to Asia and into the Middle East, as these crises develop, there will be more opportunities. And those are the opportunities we need to seize to end the plight and the suffering of the Palestinian people. And most, I think, importantly, to provide conditions for the Palestinian people so they can free themselves, because that's what this is all about. It's about self-determination. It's about not saving anyone, but in giving and creating a political environment in the instigating countries, in the political milieu that is creating the problem, creating the atmosphere so that this siege can finally end. And so George Galloway, his victory is a big piece toward that. Just one piece. And of course, there's so much more work to do, but it is a major, I think, shot in the arm to the movement. And it will, I think, have reverberations far beyond Rochdale. Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.